Are your grown-up kids turning your house into hotel mom and dad?
Hey mom, you got any salsa?
Or even worse, is your wallet their own personal ATM? In a study, they found out that nearly half of young adults are still failing to launch. They're failing to leave their home. So before you give away your spare key, let's dive into your burning questions. From the economic ripple effects to decoding how the housing market is affecting your child's future, these are the burning questions that I know that you're just dying to have answered. Hey, I'm Chris. Welcome to Money Ripples. I'm here to tell you today how you create financial freedom through passive income right now. Should we be charging our kids rent? Well, let's watch a few videos to see what others say about this before I pipe in with my own thoughts.
As someone who lived with my parents as an adult, don't charge your children rent. Whether you mean it or not, you're telling your kid that your relationship is transactional. I know it sounds like teaching responsibility, but trust me, your kids understand that money runs the world.
Interesting perspective. So don't make your relationship transactional with kids. I can see that.
Why doesn't your kid pay you rent? What are you nuts? I started charging my kid rent the day he turned 18. That's awful. Relax, man. I put away all that money for him. After a few years, he had 50 grand that he used towards his first house. Your kid is 26. Has not helped you guys at all. Well, I mean, he's having a tough time getting ahead. What the hell are you talking about? Free food? Free place? Free car? Free everything? Like, what's holding this guy back? Well, you know, the economy and, you know. Look, there's no excuse as to why he's not supporting himself in your home, let alone actually helping you guys out. I don't care. I'm not gonna charge my kid rent to friggin' live with. Kid, he's a man, a grown-ass man, and you're talking about him like he's 5 years old. Look, the fact that he's not even offering to help you guys out is a problem in and of itself. I mean, yeah. Look, give him a kick in the pants or some like, if there's no pressure, nothing's gonna change.
So we're seeing the opposite perspective now, which is, hey, why not charge them rent? They're adults and they're living free on everything else. Charge them some rent. You know, versus like, charge them rent, but I really just collect the money and put it away for them for later. Surprise.
Hot take, parents should charge adult children living at home rent. I said what I said, and before you roast me, I'm Vivian, your rich BFF and your favorite Wall Street girly, and I'm gonna explain why. One, without stating the obvious, when you move home and you're not paying rent, you're going to have more discretionary income, and some people aren't spending that responsibly. Per this headline, people moving home are fueling a luxury boom, and while some pieces are investments, most will go down in value, and it's not fair to throw your money into a pit when someone else is covering your necessities. And two, for parents, as you get older and rely on things like pensions, 401ks, and retirement savings, having an adult kid move back home can increase your fixed costs for things like utilities and groceries. Aaron Lowry at Bloomberg said it best, not only does paying your parents rent help them keep their costs managed, but even if parents don't need the money and want to help a kid out, collecting rent monthly could be an easy way to force kids into saving versus blowing their paycheck on a Gucci belt that they don't really need. Ideally, this will help get the kiddo out of the nest on their 2 feet and paying their own rent sooner rather than later.
If you don't charge them rent, what are they going to do with the money instead? Now, ideally, a parent would think, oh, my kid's going to be responsible, they're going to save that money, and then that's going to help them launch from my house. But what they're saying in reality, and it'd be good to see some data backing this up, I know this is true for many people, in reality, there's what's called the Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law says this, is that whenever you free up time or money, naturally you will end up consuming that within months. So for example, say that you had a job where you're working 10 hours a day and you get a new job where you're working 8 hours a day. It won't be long, probably 6 months later, you'll feel like, why am I just as busy as I was just with that last job? I feel just as busy, even though I'm not working at work. I feel like my time's all filled up. Remember 2020? Remember staying at home? Remember how amazing it felt to have all that free time, not going anywhere and not eating out and doing all that stuff. And then what happened? Even before the lockdowns, people were like,
I'm booked.
Well, this happens with money too. When people pay off a debt, for example, free up a few $100, the next thing you know, within months, they're also back in debt again. They feel like they're just right back to where they were, or they feel just as tight financially, not because they always go back to debt, but because they're used to spending that money, and if it doesn't have a job, it's gonna get spent. This is the key factor. When it comes to money, trust me, like I get it. I know it's tough, and I'm not saying that there's not economic circumstances. I'm not saying inflation's not kicking people's butts right now, and they're going up faster than wages, and heck, they're even going up with college tuition prices going up faster than what the money you make. It almost makes college seem like a ripoff. But that being said, at what point are you gonna take care of your own self? At what point will you be free? You can never be free without responsibility. And I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it just did this time. Dang it, I did it again. When I remember my dad, he just said, listen, when you turn 18, you're on your own. If you want to stay here, you pay rent. And so what did I do? I went to college. In fact, I actually turned 18 the day after I went to college. So I was actually 17 when I left the house technically. And I'll tell you, although it was tough and I had to learn to be lean, and I was eating crappy food, of course, like any other college kid. I was eating a bunch of potatoes because they were cheap, ramen, things like that. Even though I was doing that stuff, it still taught me how to take responsibility for my own life. It taught me how to live on my own. It taught me how to grow up. And I get it. There's individual factors here that if you have to be at home, I get it. There might be some anxiety or some mental issues that are going on that might make it harder. There could be physical disabilities or things that are happening. It could just be that you're just trying to get off the ground and you really are trying to get out. I get it. So I'm not accusing every single situation. Every person needs to leave the house by 18. I'm not saying that at all. I know there's always individual circumstances and yours could be the exception to the rule. But parents, especially for you, if you're enabling that child who is fully capable of living on their own, regardless of how hard it is, they will never truly become the adults that you want. Because let's be honest, I'm a parent. I've got 6 teenagers right now, 8 children. 6 of them are teens. One's actually an adult. Another one is about to become an adult. And I'll tell you, at least from my perspective, I want them to be independent and free. I want them to take that responsibility. Even though I don't like it, I want them to struggle a little bit. I don't want them to suffer. I don't think any loving parent wants their children to really suffer and experience a lot of pain. But at the same time, I also know from my own experience, even though I would never want to do it again, that pain and some of that suffering, just like with relationships, right? You get into a relationship, the hurt of a breakup is gonna happen. But that risk is worth it because that is where real growth happens. All right, so our children, there's no doubt they're struggling right now. There are some economic headwinds coming their way. We've talked about inflation. I mean, just with house prices alone, it's making it tough to be able to buy your own house. You can see in this chart right here, the average median income household is way less than what's happening with the home price growth. That's normal. That's because inflation is actually more than what the wages are going up right now. And it's been this way for decades. You've felt it, and now your kids are feeling it too. You know, I'll tell you, I remember my second home that I bought, it was my dream house. You guys remember 2007, 2008? It was a horrible time to have a house, especially when we watched those house prices come back down. I was actually living in my dream home, loving life. But of course, when 2007, 2008, that recession started to hit, it impacted my business, even my real estate property values, the most. And the next thing I know, I'm upside down in my house. I can't even sell it for what I owed on it. I'm trying to short sell it. Lehman Brothers owned the mortgage, so they wouldn't let me short sell it. I ended up foreclosing. I remember it was early on Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. They come knocking on the door. The guy said, I just bought your house at the courthouse a half hour ago. When can you get out? And I had to pay him $2,000 in rent just to stay in for a few more weeks so we could have our 4th child and then find a place to live. But I'll tell you, I made it. It was tough, but I still made it. In fact, here's what's great. It actually got me to figure out how to be wiser because I ended up getting a house that had a rent that was 1/4 of the cost of my mortgage. So I actually downsized. I got wiser and more responsible with my money, which allowed me to rebuild myself. It wasn't easy, it was painful, but man, it was worth it because it taught me how to be a wiser steward of my money. By the way, I mentioned earlier about creating passive income for real estate. Great thing to do for you, especially if you want to create financial freedom. In the description of this video below, you'll see a link that actually is right to our passive income calculator. So if you're curious, how much passive income could you create in addition to the job you already have? Create additional income from your money, get it working harder for you. If you want to figure out how to do that, click on that link in the description below so you can actually see how much that would actually be in the next 12 months. All right, so it's about time for me to give you the 3 signs that it's time to stop giving your kids money. But before we do, I want to actually check out this article here. We're talking about how actually supporting your children does affect the economy. Now, there is one part of the economy that's actually benefiting from your kids staying at home. That's right, you're actually creating a great business. But it's not for homes, it's definitely not for the food industry, but it's actually for luxury items. So now we've got everything figured out with your adult children and what's going on right now, the statistics. Let's talk about what are the 3 signs that it's time for you to stop giving them money, to cut them off from that piggy bank. All right, number 1 is if they have a job they can afford to already go and be on their own, let them be on their own. Don't use buying a house as the reason. The second reason is this, is what about you? You've already sacrificed for 18, 20 plus years to help them have a leg up in life. Why would you want to keep going, right? You got to take care of you. And the problem is, statistically speaking, people have not saved nearly enough to even stop working. You do not have to work for life for somebody who doesn't have to be working as long as you. You could stop working, let them take care of you for once. Although that's not my plan, but that's one thing you could be doing. Third thing is, stop bailing them out of these situations, these avoidable situations. Let them live life, like I said, let them experience it on their own. Let them figure things out. So now we've addressed the 3 things that tells you whether it's time to let your kids be out on their own. Now let's talk about 2 more things that not only will help your children now, but even if you've got younger kids, this will also help you too for you younger parents. Number 1 is education. One of the best things you can start doing at any time is education. And do not trust that high school or even college or any kind of public school for that matter is going to help them do this. Because think about it, how many of them really teach about money? Even if you take a personal finance class, a lot of times it's the same old boring crap that doesn't even apply, and then they're teaching them how to write checks, and nobody even writes checks anymore, right? I mean, they're teaching them how to do this basic stuff that, although it's helpful for doing transactional things, it's not helpful for creating wealth and creating financial independence. So get education. By the way, you're on the channel, Money Ripples channel. Feel free to use this to help support you in that. And then number 2 is you can actually start doing what's called an infinite banking policy. These are life insurance policies that you can set up on your children. And here's the good news. Even if you're saving up for college, do you know the problem is with 529 college savings plans is that what if they don't go to college? We've already seen that college costs are going up faster than wages. What if it makes more sense to not go to college? What if they want to become an entrepreneur? What if they actually want to do a vocational training that they can get as an apprentice, which is outside the college system? Now you can't use that 529 plan money without getting penalized and hurt. Many more parents are now hating their 529 plans, tossing them away, and instead doing this infinite banking strategy, which is using a life insurance policy that you can put on your kids, but you own it, you control it, and it still grows tax-free, and you can use it for whatever you want. And by the way, even if they do go to college, you know what's cool? It doesn't count against you as an asset. That means if you're trying to get financial aid, it doesn't work against you. You could have literally millions of dollars in this thing. The colleges don't care. They won't count it. You put it anywhere else, even in 529 plan, they count it against you for getting financial aid for your children. So this actually is off the books, both with taxes and with colleges, but it's there when you need it the most, which is a funding source for them, whether they go to college, they go to start their own business, or whatever they might do. It might even give them that leg up on life. When they talk about parents trying to save up their rent for their children so they can have some money someday, many of our parents are building money in these policies so they can later gift it to their adult children when they're ready to launch and to get out of the home. So guys, that's one great strategy you can learn more about as you go in the channel with more videos here that you can see in this playlist of infinite banking. Should your kids be paying your rent right now, your adult children? Well, I might be a freak here, but I'm here to tell you that I think they should. I think they should be paying your rent or go in the real world and pay rent there too. Now, I get it. I've got 6 teenagers right now. Some are actually adults. And every situation is different. But I'll tell you this, is that I am so grateful that my dad said, when you're 18, get out. Technically, I moved out the day before I turned 18. I was 17 when I went to college, had to start paying rent and living on my own. Hard as it was, that struggle made me stronger. It made me a wiser steward of my money so that I could be independent. Where if I were just coddled and pampered my whole adult life, I never would have had that kind of experience or skill to be able to live on my own later on. So I'm telling you here, the best thing you do for your kids is parent them by not parenting them, by letting them be adults, letting them deal with their own consequences, take the consequences, learn from them, and become better, well-adjusted adults to create a better legacy for your grandchildren and great-grandchildren as well.